All right, so today we are in Genesis 33 to 34 and 34. I'm going to recap quickly so far what we've gone through. So the story begins with Abraham, who is the father of Isaac, who was the father of Jacob and Esau. Jacob takes Esau's birthright with a bowl of stew, as well as Esau's blessing. This, of course, infuriates his brother and causes Jacob to flee to his uncle Laban's house. There he meets Rachel and agrees to work 7 years for her, but is instead tricked into marrying Leah. A week later, he is given Rachel in exchange for another 7 years of service. Afterwards, Jacob works an additional 6 years, this time in exchange for a flock of his own from Laban. During his years there, Jacob becomes the father of 11 children, not only from Rachel and Leah, but also from Zilpah and Bilhah, the maidservants of his wives. 12 years. 12 children, 12 children. Not 11. One of them is a girl. In chapter 31, Jacob and his family and all that he owns stealthily makes the journey to the land of his birth. After an angel of the Lord visits him in a dream, Laban discovers this and gives chase, and after a 7 days' journey, catches up to Jacob and his household. Laban rebukes his nephew for leaving suddenly and then goes on a hunt for his household idols, claiming that Jacob or one of the people traveling with him has stolen them. Unable to find the idols due to Rachel sitting on them, Jacob rebukes Laban for the service he has provided him over the last 20 years and declares that if God had not stepped in and rendered judgment against Laban, Jacob would surely have been sent away from his uncle empty-handed. After this, the two men make a covenant to not harm one another and that Jacob will not take any additional wives for himself. Finally, in chapter 32, Jacob sends messengers to his brother, and they return telling him that Esau is on his way to them, accompanied with 400 men. This frightens Jacob, and he prays to God, thanking him for his loving kindness, faithfulness, and for everything he has acquired. Jacob also prays for protection from his brother and reminds God of the promise he made, saying to him, Jacob's descendants will be numbered as the sand of the sea. In the morning, Jacob picks out presents for his brother and strategically places them in a line of succession with the rest of Jacob's belongings, hoping to appease his brother with an appealing gift, but purposely being the last of all to follow. And the night before meeting Esau, Jacob and the Lord wrestle, and although he doesn't give his name, Jacob later declares, I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been preserved. During the fight, God gives Jacob the name Israel, meaning strives with God, and also dislocates Jacob's hip socket. Not only is Jacob left with a physical reminder of the encounter, but the name given will remind him that God will be fighting for him in the times to come. Okay. So let me go to the Bible Study React channel, and so if anyone wants to read and help out with reading and the prayer at the end, then please react with the hedge emoji to that message. I see Mark was first. Mark, could you read chapter 33, 1 to 11?
Sure. Reading from the NASB. Then Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two maids. He put the maids and their children in front, and Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. But he himself passed on ahead of them and bowed down to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. Then Esau ran to meet him and embraced him, and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. He lifted his eyes and saw the women and children and said, Who are these with you? So he said, The children whom God has graciously given your servant. Then the maids came near with their children, and they bowed down. Leah likewise came near with her children, and they bowed down. And afterward Joseph came near with Rachel, and they bowed down. And he said, What do you mean by all this company which I have met? And he said, To find favor in the sight of my Lord. But Esau said, I have plenty, my brother. Let what you have be your own. Jacob said, No, please, if now I have found favor in your sight, then take my present from my hand, for I see your face as one sees the face of God, and you have received me favorably. Please take my gift, which has been brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have plenty. Thus he urged him, and he took it.
All right, thank you. All right, so this section is about the reunion of Esau and Jacob after many years apart. The last time they were together, Esau was planning on killing Jacob. Now we see that Esau is happy to be reunited with Jacob. Okay, so in verse 33 and 2. All right, in those verses, we see that despite all that God had done for Jacob and for having proved himself to be a faithful God, true to his word, Jacob still schemes here and shows a bit of weakness, ordering the wives and children in order of importance so that the least important are more in danger, and in case Esau kills them. Again, favoritism is shown in family, with Jacob ordering his wives and concubine. So the ones that were in front were, if Esau had decided to kill them, they would have maybe had more chance to run away. The ones in the back, Rachel would have more of a chance to run away. People are typing. I'm gonna try to wait more for people to type this time. Yes, very cringe. In verse 3, we see that Jacob then shows some courage, though, in going on ahead of his wives and children. He bows multiple times to appease Esau. Some say that this bowing was in humility, while others say that this was out of immense fear. But in chapter 4, we see that Jacob was stopping and bowing while Esau ran and hugged him. They both wept. This is an answer to prayer and a clear sign that God fights ahead of his people. God, in this case, the fighting was in Esau's heart to prevent any feelings of retaliation or hatred or resentment, but he made Esau completely open and missing his and wanting to welcome Jacob again. In 5, we see Jacob will continue to refer to himself as your servant and to Esau as his lord. This goes against Isaac's blessing, which puts Jacob over Esau, but it was probably to pacify any hard feelings that Jacob or Esau might still have. All right, so in verse 10, the phrase, "For I see your face as one sees the face of God," is a reference to Jacob knowing that God had delivered Jacob from Esau's possible anger and had blessed his return. Maybe I should read the verses as well. Because you guys will probably be reading it. All right, so in verse 11, "Please accept my blessing that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough." Thus he urged him, and he took it. It's possible that Jacob is strongly insisting that Esau accepts the gift out of guilt. Although that is not explicitly conveyed, we at least know that Jacob acknowledges that his prosperity is from God and feels generous to share it. A side note is that Esau was not poor, as he had 400 men with him. These 400 men are probably under Esau's lead, as he is able to offer later to have some of the men stay with Jacob. Since Esau is not poor, it is unlikely Jacob is offering this huge gift out of generosity towards someone poor. Therefore, it is a bit more likely he is feeling guilty or trying to make some amends for stealing the birthright and blessing. Okay. And you guys can ask any questions anytime, just in case you guys are wondering. Does anyone? Oh, who's next? The Sour Patch Danny. Could you read verse 12 to 17 in chapter 33?
Indeed. 12 through 17, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'll be reading from a New Living Translation. All right, here we go. "Well, Esau said, 'Let's be going. I will lead the way.' But Jacob replied, 'You can see, my lord, that some of the children are very young, and the flocks and herds have their young too. If they are driven too hard, even for one day, all the animals could die. Please, my lord, go ahead of your servant. We will follow slowly at a pace that is comfortable for the livestock and the children. I will meet you at Seir.' 'All right,' Esau said, 'but at least let me assign some of my men to guide and protect you.' Jacob responded, 'That's not necessary. It's enough that you received me warmly, my lord.' So Esau turned around and started back to Seir that same day. Jacob, on the other hand, traveled on to Succoth. There he built himself a house and made shelters for his livestock. That is why the place was named Succoth, which means shelters. Later, having traveled all the way from Paddan Aram Jacob arrived safely at the town of Shechem in the land of Canaan. There he set up. Oh, I read one verse too many.
Oh, right. Yes. Thank you for that. Thank you for reading. So we see after a bit of a reunion, Jacob decides he doesn't want to go with Esau to Seir, but intends to go to Succoth. He deceives Esau yet one more time and secretly goes to Succoth instead of following Esau to Seir, which is what Jacob led Esau to believe would happen. No worries. It happens. Yes. That's a good question. I wasn't able to find an answer for that. Why he had 400 men. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, this isn't in any commentaries, but off the top of my head, maybe a huge group of animals, and Jacob probably had some people with him. Coming might be a little bit concerning, but I'm not sure. That's not in the commentaries or something or anything. Thank you for hanging out, Matt. In verse 12, we see Esau said, "Let us journey on our way, and I will go ahead of you." So Esau suggests, we see here, Esau suggests traveling to Seir. And in 13, Jacob said to him, "My Lord knows that children are frail, and nursing flocks and herds are a care to me. If they are driven hard for one day, all flocks will die." So the phrase, the flocks and herds which are nursing are a care to me. The a care to me part is, in others' translations, translated as a concern to me, or I must care for them. That's what that little phrase means. A little bit strangely worded, but it just means plainly that I have to care for them, or they're concerning to me. And 14, "Let my Lord pass on ahead of his servant, and I will lead on slowly at the pace of the livestock that are ahead of me, and at the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord and Seir." So we see, Jacob explicitly saying, until I get to Seir." So, he explicitly made Esau believe, "Yeah, I'm coming, I'm following you." But then, he does not later. Verse 15. So Esau said, "Let me leave with you some of the people who are with me." But he said, "What need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord." Esau's again trying to be generous and helping, leaving some men there so that they could help tend with whatever Jacob needs. But Jacob says Jacob's probably trying to not have any links so that he can slip away secretly. I have a little map here to show the difference in between where Succoth is and Seir is. This is Jacob coming down, like a parallel to the Sea of Galilee, or the Jordan River, and then Seir is like down from where Esau came from, and then Jacob goes like kind of the opposite direction. And Succoth means booths or sheds, like how the NLT explained. Anybody else reacted? If you guys want to read, you can go into the Bible Study React channel and react there. But for now, Mark, could you finish the chapter 33, 18 to 20?
Sure. Now Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came from Paddan Aram and camped before the city. He bought the piece of land where he had pitched his tent from the hand of the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. Then he erected there an altar and called it El Elohe Israel.
All right. So Jacob arrives in the promised land and settled there. 19. Shechem was between Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim, which was the place where Abraham first camped when he arrived in Canaan. Interesting note. And like Abraham, he set an altar. He called it El Elohe Israel, which means El is the God of Israel. Jacob is declaring that God is his God and embracing the name Israel. All right, Danny, could you read chapter 34, 1 to 12?
Yes, I shall. 1
Thank you.
to 12. Okay. I'll be reading in New Living Translation.
All right. Unfortunately, the recording for some reason messed up, and we lost the whole second chapter. So I'm just gonna read it and do a quick summary. Now, this is Genesis 34 and the NASB 95. All right. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to visit the daughters of the land. When Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, he took her and lay with her by force. He was deeply attracted to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the girl and spoke tenderly to her. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this young girl for a wife." Now Jacob heard he had defiled Dinah his daughter, but his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Jacob kept silent until they came in. Then Hamor the father of Shechem went out to Jacob to speak with him. Now the sons of Jacob came in from the field when they heard it, and the men were grieved, and they were very angry because he had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, for such a thing ought not be done. But Hamor spoke with them, saying, "The soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him in marriage. Intermarry with us, give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. Thus you shall live with us, and the land shall be open before you. Live and trade in it, and acquire property in it." Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, "If I find favor in your sight, then I will give whatever you say to me. Ask me ever so much bridal payment and gift, and I will give according to as you say to me. But give me the girl in marriage." But Jacob's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor with deceit, saying he had defiled Dinah their sister. They said to them, "We cannot do this thing to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. Only on this condition will we consent to you. If you will become like us, and that every male of you be circumcised, then we will give our daughter to you, and we will take your daughters for ourselves, and we will live with you and become one people. But if you will not listen to us to be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and go." Now their words seemed reasonable to Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son. The young man did not delay to do the thing, because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. Now he was more respected than all the household of his father. So Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city and spoke to the men of the city, saying, "These men are friendly with us. Therefore let them live in the land and trade in it, for behold, the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters in marriage and give our daughters to them. Only on this condition will the men consent to us to live with us, to become one people, that every male among us be circumcised as they are uncircumcised. Will not their livestock and their property and all their animals be ours? Only let us consent to them, and they will live with us." And all who went out of the gate of the city listened to Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of the city. Now it came about on the third day, when they were in pain, that two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword and came upon the city unawares, and killed every male. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah from Shechem's house, and went forth. Jacob's sons came upon the slain and looted the city, because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks and their herds, and their donkeys, and that which was in the city, and that which was in the field. And they captured and looted all their wealth, and all their little ones, and their wives, even all that was in the houses. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making me odious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And my men being few in number, they will gather together against me and attack me, and I will be destroyed, I and my household." But they said, should he treat our sister as a harlot?" As a summary, Dinah was treated extremely badly by the son of the king of Shechem, also named Shechem. They wanted to offer to marry her afterwards. Then the sons of Jacob scheme to get brutal revenge. This is possible because of Jacob's lack of leadership and silence. The deceit here was to get them to be vulnerable while healing from adult circumcision. Circumcising an adult would leave him very weak and vulnerable for many days. Shechem and Hamor agreed to the plan. They also had their own reasons for wanting to marry and accept the plan. They wanted to eventually absorb Jacob and all his belongings to their city, which is what they used to convince the other males in the city to be circumcised. But then two of Jacob's sons slaughtered all the males when they were weak and looted the city. Jacob was then afraid of what happened. All right, so we see this. Jacob settles near Shechem, which was between Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim, which is the place where Abraham first camped when he arrived in Canaan. That is important to know, and also, so Dinah going out to see how the Canaanites lived is a little bit reasonable because it is probable that she's Jacob's only daughter at this point, and so a girl among 11 boys, she wanted to see how the women of the land lived. This makes sense, but the fact that such a atrocious thing happened based after like a simple investigation into the culture of Canaanites is a warning against investigating the Canaanites later, as Moses was writing this to Israelites, and they were not supposed to, intermingle with the Canaanites or have any dealings with them. Anyway, so what Shechem did was not love, even though this chapter uses love many times. This is not love. This is at best infatuation, at most something much evil. Jacob's silence when this happens is not a good leadership, and this allows like lesser people that are under him to take matters into their own hands. He should have taken leadership and decided to seek justice or seek amends or leave. But he stayed silent, which allowed people under him to take matters into their own hands. Hamor, Shechem's father, isn't any more moral than Shechem, because he doesn't seem to rebuke Shechem, but he goes along with this marriage plan. They offer business benefits to convince Jacob to accept the marriage deal. They show no signs of remorse of what happened. So it seems a little bit unlikely that all the males in the city would have been circumcised the exact same day, but in order for two men to be able to fight and slaughter a whole city, it's probably more realistic. It's probably more reasonable that they did get circumcised on the exact same day, all of them, and then so that they were all very weak on the third day. The two sons of Jacob were biological brothers of Dinah. They were sons of Leah. In verse 26, we see that, let me find it. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the edge of the sword and took Dinah from Shechem's house and went forth. So we see that Dinah was in Shechem's house at the time. It could have been that Dinah had been kidnapped along with the rape, and she was held in Shechem's house all this time. Or it could be that Dinah was given to Shechem after they agreed to the circumcision, but that seems a little bit less likely, in my opinion. I feel like it's more likely that they kept her. We later see that the rest of the sons after Simeon and Levi kill all the males, the rest of the sons then join in on the looting. They also looted the women and the children, and this is better, a little bit better than just leaving them. In those days, if there was a bunch of women and children in a city with no males there, they would have been at the mercy of the next group of males to come upon the city. So it's probably better for the Jacob's family to take them than for the next group, but still, it would have been better to leave all the males alive and not slaughter them for the sin of one man. We see that Jacob is afraid and only concerned with himself and his family only, and he wasn't really concerned much about what happened to the men, and he just said he was just worried about that him and his family would be odious among the inhabitants of the land. And yet the sons of Jacob answered defiantly, saying, even though Jacob said that, they said, should he treat our sister as a harlot? Kind of like excusing their actions. So yeah, it should be noted that this book was written by Moses to the Israelites after leaving Egypt. They already had tribal distinctions. There was already a tribe of Simeon and a tribe of Levi. There was a city called Shechem, and the mention of done a disgraceful thing in Israel uses Israel as a nation. There is a theme in this chapter, in this book of Genesis, of warning Israel about having dealings with the Canaanites and not trusting them. The nation of Israel was commanded to not intermarry with them or make treaties with them, for they were a corrupt and corrupting people. So yeah, that's the summary, and I apologize that the recording was messed up and didn't get the whole thing, but hopefully next week it will work. Goodbye.